or not, this is a church organ. I know what you're thinking. Doesn't look like a church organ. It's another item we got from the Lucien Nunes Vaz collection, and this is a late Compton Mackin church organ tone generating box thingamagoo. Currently don't have a lot of information on this one in particular, but this is the part of the machine that would have been hidden in the basement, the back room, or an upstairs room in the church somewhere. Apparently it was a common thing to happen for these to lose their console. You know, the big thing with the keys and the stops and the pedals and things. That's because the churches, as they were updated and developed, the consoles tend to have got chucked in the firewood pile, but these things tended to be inaccessible and hard to move because they're really heavy, and these just got left in situ. So unfortunately the matching console for this thing is long gone. But the reason this thing is interesting is it's because it shows a piece of technology that is a stopgap between organ pipes and church organ pipes and transistor electronics and modern electronic organs. And it's got some really interesting mechanisms, and we're going to have a look at those today. Treat this not as a history lesson because I don't have a fudging clue. I'm just going off what Lucien has told me, and also Carl and Jamie at the East Midlands Cinema Organ Association. So this video is more of a technical observation. So I've spent a few hours already here and there having a look around this thing, trying to figure out how it works and how to actually get some sound out of it. And you'll be pleased to know it is making sound, which is fantastic. It took a bit of fiddling around because yeah, there's multiple power inputs of different voltages, and it wasn't clear where the actual sound was coming out and things like that, but we'll talk about that in the video. But after finding out it needed an external 24-volt power line to turn on all of the relays, the motor down there started up and started spinning, and getting all of these via these belts to go. What these things are electrostatic tone generators, and to get a better idea of what's actually going on here, let's have a closer look at one of these. This is a spare one of the tone wheels. It's basically an electrostatic signal generator thingamagoo. But I think the best way of making it make sense is having a look on the inside. So it looks pretty ominous on its own. These two are the outputs. These are all the inputs, but the magic happens on the inside. So let's undo it and have a look-see, shall we? Are you ready to be amazed? Let's take the back plate off. Whoa, what the fudge? So this is the back plate, and you'll notice etched onto the back of it is things that look like waveforms. Loads of different sine waves of different octaves. You've got a lower frequency sine wave at the bottom, and then it slowly doubles and doubles and doubles until you're over here on the highest octave on this tone wheel. The back plate is in very, very close proximity to the wheel itself, and this is basically the electrostatic pickup. You'll see that the frequency of the raised edges to the lowered edges gets higher and higher as it goes, and these match up with the waveforms on the back plates. This means as it rapidly spins around, the distance for the electrons to travel between them modulates, which ends up modulating the output at an audible rate, which ends up sounding like a bzzz frequencies. While the principle is very similar to the Hammond tone wheel, the actual mechanics and how it does it are quite different. The Hammond tone wheel is more like a guitar pickup, where there's like a cog that's got like ribs on the outside, spins, and then the pickup picks it up. It's a little bit more of an agricultural approach. The advantage of something like this is you have more control over the waveforms. If you look at some photos of these on the internet, you'll notice that there are different waveforms on some of these, and I think there's different waveforms in the one that we're looking at for this video. However, I don't want to take that apart because it's a load of wires to have a look on the inside. So let's just trust that there is. I mean, there possibly is a way of etching your own back plate with your own waveforms maybe. That might be funky. Gosh knows how much of a faff that would be though. Anyway, let's see if we can get some sound out of this tone generator. In this setup, I've got this Nixie tube power supply. It receives 12 volts and sends out something like, I don't know, 150 volts or something. Let's have a quick look. We've got about 200 volts, so it's about half of what I usually get. Of course, the higher the voltage, the background noise to oscillator ratio is much higher. In fact, I initially tried this with 48 volts and 15 volts, and you could still hear it in the background, but there was a lot of buzzing around. So this is sending it into one of the back oscillators. The ground is basically bolted to the top of this. It's not ideal, but on the Compton organ, there's a brush touching on the top, so this will do for the demonstration. And when I twist it, you'll hear that you're able to do it. I don't know, this could be the beginnings of a tone wheel theremin or a 6-voice polyphonic synth, something like that motor synthesizer that is out at the minute. This is what I think you would call a chonky boy in Compton organ terms, because this one's actually an all-out, all guns blazing, let's chuck everything at it. You'll notice there are 3 banks of these tone wheels on the front. There is also a bank on the back of larger tone wheels, which is funky because most Compton organs usually only have 1 set of these things. For instance, the 347 that is behind you only has 1 set of the very large tone wheels, and that is enough to have a grate and a swell with a bunch of stops. We're going to have a look at that machine in another video because it's not complete. We're going to turn it into a more experimental tone machine. Anyway, in each of these banks there are 12 tone wheels, 1 for each semitone, and as you heard, each of these have different octaves and different waveforms inside of them. All of them are driven with the same motor with these belts that are just intertwined between the tone wheels. It's really amazing to look at as they're spinning. And all of the outputs of the tone wheels are coupled together and go directly to the amplifiers that are at the top. How the actual tones are selected is the electric signal going into the back of them from the rest of the machine. Let's boot it up, get the high voltage test probe and get some sounds out of it. Right, let's boot it up like we would be at the console. We're just pretending to be the console with this power supply over here. It's going to turn on a relay that's down here, that's going to turn on the motor, that's going to get it all spinning. It's running nice and smoothly now. There's a test probe here and there's some switches up here. When I've measured this, it's doing about 400 volts, but my fingers, when I touch it, only has a light buzz. So I'm just going to turn it on. I'm pretty sure you're supposed to put it on and then turn it on, but it's not that bad. And we're going to brush it down these springs that are connected to these resistors here. These are connected to the inputs of the electrostatic tone wheels, and you'll hear some funky noises. That's pretty cool, isn't it? So that's sending 400 volts DC through the tone wheels and then out into the amplifiers, and you're hearing it coming through a speaker, but that's cool, isn't it? I'm assuming this test point setup is for debugging when they're trying to maintain the machine when it was in the church. Let's quickly find a tone. So we found this tone. Now we're going to adjust the belt tensioner so it goes out of tune. So that rack is to do with all the sounds. Well, it's connected via this umbilical cord, which has got about 700 cables in it. It's not even got on a socket on it. So I hope this doesn't break because that'll suck. And that is connected over to this thing. This is in charge of all of the routing from the console. The console in these machines, funnily enough, are just controllers. They're like old school MIDI controllers. You push buttons on that and that comes via this long cord. It's got about 400 cables in it. This has been cut since it was pulled out of the church. If you push a key on the keyboard on the console, it sends 24 volts down one of the cables on the end of this into this one, which turns on a relay, which ends up turning on the bits that it's supposed to do to send the sound out. It's blooming mad, isn't it? But luckily, to demonstrate the sound to you right now, it's got another test patch bay. This is a 24 volt one, and this basically lets you turn on and off all of the relays that correspond to keys from the console, and also the stops that are the settings for the sounds on the console. So with this, we're able to turn on and off the relays for the keys, which somewhat look like a crossbar telephone exchange. It's mad the way it's set up. This is made for a console with 3 sets of keyboards and a pedal board. Each of the sets of keyboards and pedal boards has its own board of relays on it. So you've got the swell, you've got the grates, you've got the choir, and the pedal board. And as you can see, each of these moves a different relay. On the top of this cabinet, there's another 4 panels that have the stop controls. These turn on all of the different pipes and the sounds. When you flick these ones, you turn on the relays for the settings, for the swell. When you flick these ones, the grate. When you flick these ones, the choir, and these ones, the pedals, you know. Now there's something glaringly obvious about the situation we're in. Yes, we don't have a console to control it. So you're not going to hear it playing many musical tunes at the minute because I can't. But I can show you some of the sounds and stuff like that via this test bay with a few crocodile clips. tensioners on the tone wheels at the back, just to get a bit of crescendo. So yeah, it's not doing much at the minute, and I've got to be honest, annoyingly, I've only got 3 crocodile clips, so I really can't show you much. Oh, that's nice. There's some of those different waveforms, you can really hear them, like this one. Sounds sort of wave folded in a weird way. So unfortunately, the conclusion of this video isn't that great because it's not doing much at the minute. That's because, well, there's no console or ability to control it beyond the 3 crocodile clips that I could find. So yeah, we need to do some more work on this thing. Much like Joans organ, the pipe organ that I worked on last year, I'm going to use the lack of console as a blessing in disguise and make this a MIDI controlled Compton organ. The idea is pretty simple actually. It's going to be treated very similar to Joans organ, basically wiring in the circuit boards that we built for Joans organ, or making a slightly bigger and better one, into this bit, the control patch bay, and making it pretend to be a console. That means, like with Joans church organ, we can control this with anything we want to control it with. And we can also in theory use Joans organ console or another console that is MIDified to control this as well. I electrocuted myself with this just now and I've burnt my finger. That wasn't very nice. If you're going to work on these, be careful. There are some shocks in there. If you want to support this venture, go and check it out on Patreon. I'll be talking about the progress of this project in detail over there, as well as a load of other projects. And it also helps fund the museum so people can use things like this. And when this is done, it is going in there next to Joans organ. Anyway, until next time, I'm Luke Mum No Computer. This is the Compton organ tone bank thingamagoop. And yeah, if you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe. And if you work on these, just don't touch the 500 volt line, please.